Good morning. Welcome to Squared Circle. This is episode number 34 and volume 2 of my interview with Ben Warren, who's right now in New York in his studio, and I am out here in Colorado. How are you, Ben? Good morning.
Good morning. How are you? I'm a little bit under the weather, but I'm hoping to get through it. I've got a little bit of a sore throat.
Oh, no. What got you the sore throat?
Well, I know you know a lot about like health aids. Is there anything I should be taking for this?
Well, how'd you get the sore throat to begin with? Is it like a cold or is it that yelling?
No, it's a cold, and I think it has my doctor says it's acid reflux related. I don't know. Have you ever heard anything like that?
Oh yeah. Yeah. So acid reflux is acid. So you have hydrochloric acid inside of your digestive system in your intestine. And when you have acid reflux, it comes up and it burns your throat and it can really damage your throat.
Oh shit.
So do you get heartburn ever?
Yeah, I get really sick. I start feeling like I'm going to vomit only when I talk about certain subjects.
All right. Oh man. Well, only when you talk about.
I'm hoping we're going to stay away from those subjects today.
Maybe. Yeah. You know, I mean, you're the guest, so you guide the discussion as you like.
Oh, I'm the guest.
Yeah, you're the guest.
Okay.
You're the guest on the show. Squared Circle.
Squared Circle is the name of the show.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
No, thanks for being here. I know you have a very busy schedule.
I do. As soon as this is over, I'm running off to my jet.
No, you're not. Well, how are you enjoying the impeachment?
I'm actually really enjoying it. I can't believe how clear the case was laid out in the first 20 minutes. It was like, bam, this is it. Whoa, what was that?
Just helping with the sound effect. Bam.
Oh, bam. That was it. It was like everything was right there in the first 10 minutes.
Yeah, I don't think I can't imagine he's gonna last through a re-election. I think he'll probably last to the end of the term, only because I think that's a strategic thing to do.
Right.
You know, just to keep the unrest from becoming a cyclonic maelstrom of mayhem.
Cyclonic maelstrom. Yeah, I could see that happening.
Yeah. So, you know, you have to really calculate a lot of variables, think 3 or 4 steps ahead.
But again, you know, this is what we always talk about when we're texting, and Trump is just a symptom of the problem. I mean, the problem is much, much greater than Trump. He is just the visible illness of this country that is so neatly hidden beneath, you know, all of our wonderful, you know, our wonderful ways that are so evident on the surface. There's kind of like a dark underbelly crawling. You ever see the beginning of that movie? What was it called? It was a David Lynch movie, Blue Velvet.
Yeah, I love that movie.
Yeah, love that movie. The very first shot is you see this suburban lawn. Yeah, right. You see the suburban lawn, and the camera sort of zooms down into the grass, and then you see all these, like, I think they're maggots and like worms just eating. I think it's like a decomposing hand or something. I don't know what it is, but
yeah.
I really think that's America right there. You know, this perfect suburban lawn. You start zooming in closer, and it's just a bunch of maggots off a dead body.
Yeah. I mean, I think that everyone, I think to be a human being, there's a certain amount of darkness.
Yeah.
And suffering that happens internally. And I think no matter how much you have or how little you have, I don't think that changes. I think our ability to have conscious thought is just as much a dangerous, violent thing as it is a positive. And I think that we're constantly vacillating between enjoying that opportunity and suffering from it all day long. Most animals, they have a very clear understanding of exactly what they need to do and how they need to do it. They got an assignment, and it's like, there's 4 things to do, and that's it. And you just do those 4 things and you're done. And of course, if you don't do those 4 things, then there are ramifications, and you're either destroyed, dispatched very quickly, or over time you tend to starve to death, or whatever the consequences are for not doing those 4 things. And with the human being, there's still the essential same 4 things. You know, the pursuit of shelter, the pursuit of food, the pursuit of love, and the pursuit of
animals pursue love, or they
I
just want to
think,
reproduce?
yeah, I think they just want to reproduce, but yeah, I can't say. Maybe somebody can write in the comments of this thing. I'm sure we'll have thousands of viewers, and then somebody who knows about what, if they pursue love, they pursue reproducing. That's a natural instinct. And I think
I've often pursued love with animals.
Yeah.
Sometimes, I mean.
Oh, well, yeah, but not like animal passions.
Oh, no. Where's your mind, Enrique? I'm talking about
in the gutter where it belongs. Yeah, I don't want to go off on that tangent, but yeah, somebody forced me to watch Animal Passions, and it was funny.
Oh, you saw a man making love to like a horse or something? Or
it's a documentary on YouTube.
Oh.
And if you see it, you can't unsee it.
God.
So I would steer away. I'm sure you're going to have to see it now, but it's hard to stay away.
But like getting back to what, if you don't mind, I mean, when I said that Trump is a symbol of this problem in America, do you agree with that? I mean,
I don't know. I think that I certainly agree with, he's a symbol of some aspects of it. Again, it all depends on, I mean, we generally attract and reflect who we are into the world, and then we attract those that are like us to us. So I definitely do believe that there are certain aspects of who he is that is inside of millions and millions of people. People that supported him, I don't think they're all bad people at all.
Oh, no.
I think that they have
60 million people. They can't all be bad, right?
Yeah, no, I don't think. I think probably only a small fraction of them are actually bad people, if there's a thing called bad people. And I think that there's good people and there's bad people, but I think that what they're focused on is they're calculating very specific variables and not calculating other variables. And I think that's a systemic problem with our whole system of a democracy, is that everybody has a voice, which that's what we want. We want everybody to have a voice, everybody to vote. The consequence of wanting that is something that I think that communist and socialist countries have addressed, is not allowing that and making sure that that's not a possibility, taking away, or not even taking away, but not even providing a First Amendment, not providing a Second Amendment, not providing any of those amendments, actually. And the way that you control the masses is by not giving them any of those amendments. There's too many examples to mention that are like that. Like most African countries, most Asian countries, you as soon as you give people the ability to think independently, then they will. And then that creates a lot of dissension, a lot of independent thinking, which is not exactly in tune with what the leader wants. And that is a consequence. I think it's good, because I'm all for having the amendments and I'm all for having people have freedoms. But at the same time, I recognize why being a steward of a country with 307 million people is incredibly difficult, because no matter how incredible your decisions are on a utilitarian basis, greatest good for the greatest number, you're going to make millions and millions and millions of people hate you tremendously. Even though you are doing technically the right thing, you're creating a tremendous amount of hatred for yourself.
Well, look at Trump's very first announcement when he came down the escalator at Trump Tower. He said the Mexicans, they're rapists. They're taking our women. They're taking our jobs. They're crossing the country illegally. They're bringing their guns and the terror. He summarized it perfectly. He got the attention of this country that way. And he riled up a lot of hatred, exactly what you're talking about. You're talking about hatred. And
well, I'm talking about hatred.
I know, you're talking about it in a different way.
I'm talking about hatred towards a leader. So if you're a leader and you make all of the best utilitarian decisions, you're going to have, in a country with 307 million people, tens of millions of people hate you.
Sure.
And that's if you do everything right.
Things right.
Yeah, that's if you do everything right. So the whole concern right now is how many people right now think that Trump is doing everything right, and what variables are they calculating, and what variables are they not? And then we look at some of the candidates, for example, and I think that some of the people who are most vehemently against Trump or most confident in their position of being against Trump are also looking at people who are just as bad, according to some people who are calculating other variables. I'll give you an example of why I think that Elizabeth Warren might be just as bad as Donald Trump. Taking 2% of someone's net worth after $50 million. So let's just look at what that is. You have a lot of people's net worth is different than their income. So net worth often represents non-performing assets. So for example, if you have a house worth $8 million, that's a non-performing asset. If you have a Picasso, okay, worth $35 million, okay, non-performing asset. If you have a stock portfolio, I'll just use this company just for the purpose of this example. Let's say you own $30 million worth of Amazon stock. It's a non-performing asset. In other words, Amazon stock pays you absolutely zero. It's just as valuable as a Picasso on the wall.
Right.
And when the value of the stock or the value of the Picasso goes down, then your insurance costs go down. Your net worth goes down. But at the end of the day, there isn't a practical utility to these things. So let's say, for example, we'll call it person A, has that exact amount of stuff. A $35 million Picasso, $30 million worth of Amazon stock, a $10 million, a $5 million home in Los Angeles, and a $5 million apartment in New York. That's like $80 million, right? I wasn't doing all the math. Now, that person, let's say their income is $800,000 a year. Their tax burden is going to be about 3 times what their income is. So what that does is that forces them to sell those assets, which doesn't do any good because now we're selling those assets and then we're deteriorating the value of those assets. There's no real purpose in doing that. The higher those assets are worth, the more someone can actually go and borrow against them and use them as collateral in order to build businesses and create jobs. So if I have a $35 million Picasso on the wall, I can't earn any money off of that. But what I can do is I can go to the bank and I can borrow, let's say, $10 million. I can start a business, or I can do whatever I'm going to do with a business, increase it, start it, whatever, hire people, manage it, operate it, hopefully to a successful end. That's an example of how doing something like having a wealth tax is an incredible absurdity. And I don't know exactly what the percentage is, and I don't know that anybody knows this, but 100% of the people that I know don't earn 2% of their net worth every year. And if they did, they still have to pay income tax on that income. So you'd actually have to make about 4% or no, 6% of your net worth every year in order to actually break even, based on what Elizabeth Warren's proposal is. And I don't know anybody who makes 6% of their net worth every year, who's worth over $50 million.
All right, let's. I think we have to talk maybe a little bit broader.
Well, wait 1 second. Wait 1 second. I just want to. We can do that. I think that the value in coming up with solutions and interpretations is to get extremely specific. But can you at least comment on what I just said? I know I don't make 6% of my net worth every year at all. I probably make 2% of my net worth, if that. So I don't earn that much money every year. I would be in a complete and utter disaster if something like that went through, because I don't earn 2% of my net worth. I also don't have, I'm not in this particular realm of who she's actually, looking at. However, I will say that Elizabeth Warren, as example, and this is documented, you can Google it because I just pulled it up before our call, all her tax returns are public. So she's got about a $10 million net worth. Last year she made $900,000 in 2018. She paid 25.6% income tax. I made less than her, and I paid 54% income tax. This is a person who basically taught at Harvard University extremely privileged kids who are paying incredible tuitions to go there how to use the bankruptcy laws in order to basically game the system.
Eventually, I got to speak because you're just putting that stuff.
Yeah. Well, she didn't teach at a community college. She didn't teach at the poor kids. She didn't teach the people who were having struggle paying their bills. She didn't teach anybody who didn't have $75,000 a year to pay for Harvard. Those are not the people she was teaching.
Look, I think let's just think about what you're actually talking about, okay? I'm going to use your very examples. You're talking about Picasso's and $8 million houses and $8 million in stocks. And
30 million. I'm just using examples, yeah.
All right, well, whatever the examples are. These are so far away from the real world struggles of everyday human beings like me. Like for example, in the very place you're sitting in, right? Where are you? Denver?
Yeah.
Colorado? There's about 500,000 people right now, I just Googled it, who don't even have access to food, water, shelter. Remember those 4 things you were talking about with the animals? They don't have those 4 fucking things.
Right.
Forget about the Picasso's and the 8 million in Amazon.
But having somebody sell their stock hurts them.
But no, it doesn't. I'm not worried about the guy that's going to have to sell his Picasso to fucking come up with some tax money as much as I am with the kid sleeping in a cardboard box tonight in the fucking Arctic frost that's coming. Right. That's the shit that I'm worried about, man. I don't give a shit about these rich people and what they got to sell to come up with the money. They've been avoiding taxes for generations. Most of the money is in stocks, inheritances, trusts. It's not about jobs. It's about taking money from it's not active creating wealth. It's passive wealth. That's what's the crazy thing that's happening in this world. That's why you're seeing such alarm about the division between rich and poor, that wealth inequality. That's what's so shocking. It's like, there's no end to it. You're not going to end it because the kids are just going to fucking sit there and go, my daddy left me $1 billion and I can sit here and make $300,000 a fucking day.
Well, that's when that happens. I don't, I don't know too much about those examples. And of course I read and I understand and I see what's, I see that you're absolutely right in some situations. But I can speak from my personal observations, and I don't know anybody with $1 billion that got it like that. The only people that I know with $1 billion are people who grew up with nothing, put in the 110, 115-hour work week, 7 days a week for a decade, and then finally started to eke out some kind of an income. And most of these people employ up 50,000 people, 100,000 people, and that's what they do. So
well,
I think that
actually are real estate and in the real estate and financial sector by far. And those two sectors, wouldn't you know it, financial meltdown, economic collapse.
And I agree. And I think that we should have, and I was very vehemently against the whole idea of loaning people money who couldn't possibly afford it to pay it back. And there was so much yelling and screaming, I remember in the 80s, by people who were frustrated that they would go to a bank and the bank would say no. And now we're back to that, fortunately, and that's why we're on a more steady screen. People, or a more steady, what am I looking for? A more steady glide path to not having something like that happen again.
Are we really?
Yeah, well, we still are loaning money to too many people that shouldn't be getting it. And that is a problem. But I hear it all the time. I hear it constantly from people that are like, man, I went to the bank and I want to buy a house and they won't give it to me. And I'm like, well, I could see that they might make $30,000 a year and they're looking to borrow $300,000 and I know they're never going to pay it back. The bank has to be responsible. Also, the problem that I do think that's systemic is I think we have an enormous
responsible banks. They're so responsible. When it comes to fucking defrauding the American public, they're very responsible.
Well, I'm just saying you can't loan money. The only reason that we did that in 2004 to 2007 is because we figured out the banking industry, not me, I had nothing to do with it. The banking industry figured out how to package these bad loans and then sell them to other countries and other companies. So it was this musical chairs thing. It was really bad. It was something that the Bush administration, wanted to start getting people to be able to have access to capital. I was always, as a fiscal conservative, I was always extremely nervous about that and very against that. I said, do not loan money to anybody who needs it. That's basically the rule of thumb. If you need to borrow money, you should not be able to access it because that's a disaster. And that's what the banks were doing, is loaning people money who clearly couldn't pay it back. And now what I'm seeing is something very different. Today,
there was also a real estate bubble.
Well, it was created because of that. That's why the real estate bubble existed, because it was created from loaning everybody who shouldn't be getting money to buy real estate. And it was creating all this wealth. So what we were seeing back then in 2006, 2007, 2005, we were seeing people worth millions of dollars on paper that were not earning anywhere near 2% of their net worth. Again, another example. And they were worth millions of dollars on paper, which is what most wealth is. And it was an impractical situation. Today, what I'm seeing more of is people with bank accounts. It's just people with real bank accounts, with real savings, and are actually thinking, I'm going to go, if I'm going to buy a house, I'm going to put 50% down. And I'm going to make sure that my payments are low, that I can easily pay for them. And that's what I'm seeing over the last few years, which is a way better thing. So you have a lot more equity in the real estate market. You still have a lot of debt. You still have a lot of people buying cars that they can't actually afford. And that is what causes these bubble bursts. The bubbles don't burst because somebody's got $800 million in a checking account somewhere. That's not causing bubbles to burst. What causes the bubbles to burst is when people have to sell assets. That's actually technically what makes bubbles burst. People are not keeping up with the payments. Somebody starts selling, next person starts selling, and then it becomes a capitulation.
Now, Enrique, do you mind if I draw back and just pan back to the general picture for a minute? Because I want everybody to understand like where I'm coming from. I want you to understand. It's very simple. I mean, when you break it all down, I don't know if you tend to dwell on it, or if you realize it, or if I dwell on it too much or whatever, but we've been given a lot of advantages in this world.
Oh yeah.
You know, like it's everything. It's just even having fucking two legs, you know. Some people don't have that, right? Some people, they're born with these tremendous disadvantages. And this is just my philosophy is this is where I think the government can step in. It's the one fucking thing the government can do good in this world, which is maybe if it's organized right, and if the government is smart enough to utilize its tremendous tools, it can somehow even the playing field a little bit. So a guy that may not have two legs can get into a restaurant, because I'm sure all your restaurants are ADA, right?
Of course.
So, and so are mine.
Yeah, you have to be.
You have to be. And that's because the government said, you got to let people in with one leg just as much as you got to let people in with two fucking legs.
Yeah.
That's what I want from my government. I want them to see maybe somebody is experiencing racism. They can't get a job because, let's say, or they can't get a house because Trump says, we're not going to give apartments to black people. The government steps in and says, you got to give a certain amount.
Yeah.
A company like Amazon doesn't hire you because you're black. I'm not saying this is the truth. It's just an example. The government says you can't not hire people because they're black, right? Yeah. That's what I want.
That's what we're getting already. That's exactly what's happening.
No,
we've got anti-discrimination laws all over the place and everywhere you turn.
Well, okay, let me just say. What we're actually getting is a government that's helping funnel the money upward in a way that we haven't ever seen in this country. Maybe the beginning of the 20th century before the Great Depression. But shit is getting fucking crazy.
Well, wait a minute, but you were just talking about ADA and anti-discrimination, and that's what we've got already. So
no.
What do we do? What do we not have? Because you just mentioned all these things that we're already doing. So that's already working. I think it could work even better. I think that there's also all kinds of crazy. Do you think that there's
money is getting funneled to the rich right now?
Hold on a second.
The government.
Do you know? I was reading an article the other day about Harvard and a lot of the Ivy League schools. They actually have this racist thing going on now, and I can't pull it up right now because I don't have a guy over here that I could pull something up, and I don't want to sit here and touch this up. But you can check this out. The Ivy League schools are charging Asian people higher tuitions than everyone else.
Wow.
Because they are scoring higher on their entrance exams. They have a lot more ease getting in. So I used to park my plane at Princeton airfield there. And I would go into Princeton University from time to time.
Did you keep the Picasso on the plane, or did you take it with you?
I didn't say I had a Picasso.
Okay, sorry.
There's no reason to do that.
I mean, I'm making a joke. I can't joke.
Yeah, you can joke. But I would go into Princeton University, and I was looking around, and I just made observations. These are not negative observations, but I made an observation that it seemed like everyone was Asian at Princeton.
Asian.
That's what it seemed like, and that's not a bad thing. It's just an observation that I made.
Okay.
And I thought, wow, I think the reason that half the people I see here are Asian is because they might be smarter than everybody else. Do you think that that some cultures or races can be more inherently intelligent than other cultures or races?
See, now you're getting into some tricky stuff, man.
Sure, it's tricky.
It's
I didn't
tricky.
bring you on the show to make it easy. We're having a show. We want to ask questions. I want to understand what you think. And you know, it's very tricky, but it's a real question that I think that I think is worth examining.
So, but I mean, like, what's the final point here? Like,
well, you find out what the final point is as we go through the discussion.
Well, look.
Do you think that some races or cultures are predisposed to having higher intelligence than other races or cultures?
Well, I think some cultures are much more disciplined and
Right.
much more focused on learning and much more, you know, they come from a very paternalistic, you know, kind of, you must do this to succeed. You must follow the rules. You must put in the hours. You like, look at these guys, these crazy businessmen in Japan who like work all day long and then, you know, get wasted, drunk, and then, you know, they commit suicide. Their lives are so empty. Look, the bottom line is, no matter.
I don't know what.
Okay.
I think that there are Japanese people who work very hard. I think that's
It's a culture
I think that's part of their culture, just like a segment of the American population. A small segment of the American population has a very similar idea about work ethic that the entire Japanese culture has. I think that the only difference is that having that work ethic in Japan isn't going to get you far. Having that work ethic in the United States is going to get you pretty much everything you want. So it's a little bit, yeah, I think you're right. And I think that what you just said is interesting, because you said some cultures are more disciplined and more geared towards learning. Maybe it's not even so much about learning, but it's about the mechanics of academics. Because these kids with straight A scores at Princeton, have you seen them drive? It's crazy. They can't drive a car though. And so I think that I think it's really just about the discipline, like you just said. It's about that focus. It's about parents who teach their kids values that are going to ultimately get them to where they need to go.
Right. Okay.
So I think that's really what it is.
Parents, schools, teachers, these are the things. Again, when I hear about a company that, you know, we spoke about offshore bank accounts and how the rich are fleecing this country out of, I think it's like.
You got to give specifics though.
Okay, I think the rich have so much money hidden in offshore bank accounts that it accounted for about $1.5 trillion in missing tax money yearly. All right.
Yeah, so, but remember that not doing it, the Americans super wealthy are not doing anything different than the Norwegians.
No, it's all happening
Danish,
around
then the Swedish, then the Russians, then the Chinese, and all these guys. The Venezuelan president Maduro currently has, I think, something in the neighborhood of $70 billion in Europe and Cyprus and Isle of Man, all over the place. It was a whole investigation.
No, it's happening around the world.
Right.
But as an American whose child is going to public school right now, and the thought that these companies are ripping off, you know, our children's education for their own greed because they want another, you know, whatever, $30 million paycheck for their CEO at the expense of the kids. It's sickening. That is sickening to me.
Well, I do you think that a school gives a better education if it has more money?
Well, whatever, regardless of how
No,
the
it's a
money.
question. Do you think that a school is going to teach your son better information by having more money?
I can't answer that question because I don't know the
Fair.
exact.
I don't know the answer either.
Yeah.
I would
I just
guess
know,
that
I know
it's
one
not.
thing for sure. School needs money. It costs a lot of money. Teachers should not be paying out of their own pockets for fucking pencils and, notebooks. This has gotten
Right, and we were talking about the federal taxes in our last discussion.
so
And so, schools don't get.
all right. I mean, look, the bottom line is whether it's roads or schools or transportation,
I'll tell you where it comes from.
Ripped off.
I'll tell you where it comes from. Where it comes from is property taxes and asset values. So property taxes are probably the most important aspect of paying for schools. That's where the money comes from. Very specific. Wait. Just very specifically. If everybody.
Are you sure?
Yes.
100%.
100%. That's where the money for schools come from. Property taxes. So let me explain something. If someone like Elizabeth Warren were to be president and asset values were to be eroded because everybody has to sell their property, and it starts from the top down, the $10 million houses start getting sold for $8 million, and then the $5 million houses get sold for $4 million, and then the $600,000 houses get sold for $400,000. Asset values start to deteriorate, and then next thing you know, boom, 50% of all of the income from property tax is gone. And then the schools not only do they not have pencils, and teachers have to do that, but they don't have anything. And then we really have mayhem. So the most important thing, it's a little bit of a dichotomy, and it's a very difficult thing because gentrification does two things. Gentrification displaces people who are low income people because the rents get too high. They did not invest in their community to benefit from asset appreciation, whereby they would be able to sell their property for significant amounts of money and then move somewhere else, or simply remain there and just continue to pay the exact same amount of money that they were paying when it was cheap because they purchased their home and nothing changes. The only thing that changes, or one of the things that change when gentrification and you actually own your home and you're a low income person and you're paying for your property with no problem, is you end up just making more money. And then it becomes easier for you to pay for your property. If you're only renting and you didn't make an investment in your community, the rent goes up and then you have to move because you didn't make an investment in your community. But the other consequence of all of that happens is asset values starting to increase, property values go up, and then more property taxes. Like, I can't even tell you how much I'm paying in property taxes for this. I don't even have a kid in school, but it's probably the equivalent of putting 3 kids through school. And I don't have any kids going to any school anywhere around here or anywhere. So that's basically.
Just be happy.
No, but I'm still paying for kids to go to school.
Good.
I'm paying for them to go to school in Florida. I'm paying for them to go to school in Denver. I'm paying for them to go to school in New York. I'm paying for kids to go to school all over the place, and that's fine.
Good.
But here's the thing. Someone like myself has to continue working 100 hours a week in order to continue paying for these kids to go to school.
I mean, that's your choice.
Of course, no, exactly. It's my choice. But if all of a sudden my income were to completely disappear, which would happen under Elizabeth Warren, I would have a negative income every year. That's what I would have. I would have way less than zero income if her system actually were to go into place. So therefore, asset values start to decrease, capitulate, and therefore the schools don't get funding. Schools get funding. The higher the value of the real estate, the more money the schools get to put the kids in. That's how it works.
I'd like to.
Can you respond to that?
Yeah, I'm going to respond to this exactly. I've been hearing a lot of billionaires and millionaires, very rich people talk about Elizabeth Warren in the last few weeks. This has been the the
But you're
vote.
not even answering anything that I'm saying. It's just, I'm saying something and then you're just saying something else.
No, I'm getting there.
All right.
I'm hearing a lot of rich people, billionaires, and hedge fund managers.
What about middle-class people?
Well,
Middle-class people are terrified.
Wealth tax doesn't hit the middle class, right? You're talking about the wealth tax, right?
I'm talking about people that have assets. Yeah, and I think that Elizabeth Warren.
At what point does the wealth tax hit it? Is it 50 million?
According to what Elizabeth Warren was saying, 50 million, but then Bernie Sanders came out and said he wants to make it 10 million. And then, of course, Elizabeth Warren said no, because Elizabeth Warren would then be affected.
So you're talking about people with $50 million or more.
$50 million of assets, they don't necessarily have a big income. Right, they don't necessarily have a big income.
Now, you have to forgive me, but I'm not going to cry about that.
No, and I am, because I can see how many tens of thousands of people are going to lose their jobs. Because the first thing that goes,
again, I told you, it's been, the money in this country now has shifted away from active job creators into a passive income. That's why it's so, that's what this book that I told you to read last night.
Wait, hold on one second. Something's happening. Hold on a second. Good afternoon. Yeah, he is going to be here in 20 minutes. Is that okay? And you know what? I'm just call you back. Okay, I've got your number. Yeah, I've got it right here. I'll call back. All right. Okay, I'm back.
All right. So because the money is getting so concentrated into so few hands, passed down from generation to generation. Even if you give away a fortune, you talked about Bloomberg. He's got what, like $50 billion. Even if you give away, it's such a concentration of wealth that this country, like you've never seen this kind of like. You're talking about. When I talked to you the other day, I said a billionaire is someone that's made $5,000 a day since Columbus discovered America. That kind of money, it doesn't come from just working hard and following the American dream. That money comes from usually exploitation, stocks, real estate. It's passive.
You just mentioned three things all in one thing. You said exploitation.
Yes.
That's a bad thing.
Yes.
Stocks, that's not a bad thing.
Well,
and real estate, that's also not a bad. So you just commingled a bad thing with two good things.
I said it was bad and passive.
I don't think there's anything passive about real estate, man. It's hard work, and you lose a lot of money, and then you make some, and then you lose some, and it's extremely difficult.
Well, I guess that's situation. I know.
I've been in the real estate business since I'm 18 years old, and I can tell you, it's not easy. It's extremely difficult.
That still
nothing passive about it.
Yes, there is. You're collecting rent from tenants.
That's not what real estate is. Real estate is identifying a piece of property, building it, taking a risk, going and leveraging, putting your name on the dotted line as a personal guarantee. Hopefully you can get the thing built on time. Hopefully you can get a tenant. If you don't get a tenant for 4 months, you're probably going to foreclose and you're going to lose the whole thing. So no, it is extremely difficult. It's very, very challenging.
Nobody said it wasn't difficult, but it's
and there's nothing passive about it, because you have tenants who don't pay their rent, and then you also have tenants who call and say this broke, and then you got to fix that, and that constantly goes
by a superintendent or management company.
Yeah, you got to pay them, and that gets taken away. I know. I mean, look, there are people who I'm close with who buy a piece of real estate. It takes them 7 years just to break even.
Yeah, well, welcome to the real world. That's the way it is with.
No. When you have a job, then you just go into the job and then you get a paycheck 2 weeks after you start. That's not the real world. That's a very different world.
No,
it's a very hard world. It's not like that.
Hold on. That's different. Going into a job every day is different than starting a bar or owning a building. That's when you're plunking down lots of money and capital and working hard for years to try to
make something. With a job, you work half as much for twice the pay. It's a different kind of a situation. When you own the business, you work twice as hard for half the pay. And then maybe if you're one of the very, very few 5% of businesses succeed.
So what is your overarching philosophy here? What are you trying to say? Oh, poor rich people, we work so hard.
No, what I'm saying is that there's a direct correlation.
Come in and take it all from me.
No, it's not. Well, first of all, it's not me. I know sometimes I'm using the word I in this, but it's really got nothing to do with me.
So what
if I were to have, which I don't, but if I were to have assets worth $60 million, if I were to, there's no way I could earn enough money every year to pay for that. The financial crisis occurred because people's income was not sufficient to cover the cost. So they bought real estate and they realized, oh, this is a lot harder than I thought. I thought this was going to be passive income. And then they realized they didn't get a tenant right away. And then nothing worked the way they thought because they were able to access capital that they didn't have the skills to manage. So the same thing here. If all of a sudden more people cannot, well, if nobody can afford to pay the bill, that means they have to sell the assets. If they have to sell the assets, that means the assets become worth less. And it goes on and it goes into a capitulation. And then asset values decrease. Now schools have no funding. The roads can't get fixed. None of those things that happen in a municipality can actually occur because you've got two things that are funding infrastructure. State tax and property tax. In some places, there are no state tax, like Louisiana, Florida, Arizona, Nevada, Texas, New Hampshire. These are states that do not have state taxes, so they rely very, very much wholeheartedly on property tax. And when you're relying completely on property tax for everything to function, the goal is to create opportunities to get gentrification happening. So every decision is made. You've got opportunity zones for real estate. The opportunity zones for real estate create a larger diameter for which the sweet spot is, where people can move into the urban communities. It expands the urban footprint and make it so people can earn more money, increase asset values, thereby increasing property taxes in order to basically fund these infrastructures. I think that one of the things that, and that's how it works.
I understand if you want to get technical. I know you know your shit and you went to college and you can talk about all this. I can't talk about it. So it's just like, I don't, I haven't studied economics. I don't know this stuff. All I just know is that in the fucking pudding. The rich are getting richer, the poor are getting poorer, the middle class is getting just owned. People feel like increasingly disheartened. They feel like their lives are just, that they feel kind of a desperation. And people in this country are really ripe for a revolution. That's why someone like Bernie Sanders is not even a joke anymore. He is like, he could become president of the United States. And there's a class in this country who are terrified of that. And the reason why is simply this: no matter what highfalutin thing you talk about, the reason is simply this: don't take my fucking money.
Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. Don't take anybody's money. Don't take anybody's money. Don't take the poor's money. Don't take the middle class. Don't take the rich. Don't take the super rich. Don't take anybody's stuff from them, because now you're treading on an extremely dangerous situation.
But the money right now is going from the poor to the rich.
I don't see that.
Yes.
Well, give me an example.
Well,
Well,
I can show you a million examples.
so what do you think is a good solution? So how do we solve this problem? I just explained to you why the Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders systems would actually create more pain, more poverty, and more suffering.
Well, no, but there's something flawed with your logic.
What?
Because it's, again...
What? No, what is flawed?
It's trickle down, basically.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
I'm asking you, what is flawed with my logic?
You're espousing a trickle down theory, which
no,
is...
I'm not.
Yes, you are.
No, I'm not. I don't see...
I'm talking about jobs. You're saying you can't tax us because eventually it's going to cost jobs. It's going to cost the economy.
No, you got to tax people. You can't do a wealth tax because that's going to cause tremendous harm to the lower and middle class. How? The people that I know, I just explained all that. I can't do it again. You got to watch the video. You got to watch the video after we finish it, and then I'm going to post it and you can watch the whole thing. I can't explain the entire 11-minute thing again. But what I can tell you, the people that I know that are the most concerned about an Elizabeth Warren presidency are the middle income, highly educated. Those
Not
are the
true
people.
At all. They're the ones that are actually polling in the top for her. What are you talking about? I
said the people that I know that are most concerned with an Elizabeth Warren presidency, are the people who are middle class and highly educated.
Well, that's exactly the opposite of the truth. So I don't know what you know, but you might want to learn more. The people that overwhelmingly support Elizabeth Warren are the highly educated middle class.
Well, I don't know those people, and people will leave comments. Let's hope we can get somebody to watch this video, and people will leave comments, and let's see, what people think. I have no idea. I think that if you say that what I'm saying is flawed, I'm asking you which part of what I said is flawed.
Okay, the people that poll highest supporting Elizabeth Warren are educated middle class.
I never said that. I said the people that I know that are most concerned are highly educated middle class. I didn't say that I didn't say anything other than that.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know that many people. I know.
So the sample size is small in your polling.
Yeah. I got 400 people that work in my umbrella of operations.
Anyway, what's the point? So you're saying that people are scared in the middle class about what's going on?
I think that people with kids are really concerned. The people that understand economics based on exactly what I just explained. What happens to asset values? During that whole economic collapse, who got hurt? Who got hurt the most during the financial crisis? The rich or the poor?
The poor.
That's right. And the reason they got hurt.
That's always right.
Right. And the reason that they got hurt is because of asset value deterioration. Jobs got eradicated because everybody couldn't support. When you borrow money from a bank, you're basically.
Jobs and assets are different. I know that.
They're all interconnected. When you borrow money from a bank, you're putting up collateral. If your collateral is worth less,